Good evening. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. If everybody will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chambers, if you'll call roll call.
Mr. Hilberg.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Ms. Pavlik.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the virtual regular meeting on August 24th, 2020, and the virtual work session September 8th, 2020.
I'll second.
Okay. Any additions, corrections? No? Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask if there's any additions, removals, modifications to the agenda. No? No? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Sable.
I have several items that I wanted to share tonight, and I know that some of this might be repeat from our work session, but I think it's important to bring this back up at the regular meeting. I want to welcome all of our students back to school. 1 week from today, we are going to have students throughout the district in our buildings. All of our teachers are back and working in their classrooms, and I know are excited to have students return. We are taking a slow transition to have the students back into the classroom, and we refer to that as a soft start. And there really is important rationale as to why we are doing that. First of all, next Monday is going to be primarily students new to the building. So we're talking about 9th graders, 6th graders, and they unfortunately missed out on the opportunity for an orientation. Since many of those students, it's their first time in the buildings, and not just their first time in the buildings, but also having to adapt with the changes that have been made due to COVID and social distancing and one-way hallways and one-way stairwells, as we discussed last week, that we want to make sure those students have an adequate opportunity to learn their new school home and become familiar and be welcomed to their new buildings. Following that, we're going to have multiple days with half of our students. The reason is to familiarize our students overall with COVID procedures. Obviously, none of us have been through this before. I think we've said over and over, this is our first pandemic. That's the case for our students as well. So students that are familiar with the buildings are going to need some time to work with teachers and administrators to make sure they have a good understanding of what the practices are going to be throughout the building. This is especially important because our plan is to keep our students in school. Just like I've been saying, the plan has been to get them back into school. Once they're in, it's going to be to keep them in. And our students are going to play a big role in doing that by following the procedures that are in place for COVID and wearing their masks. And we can't expect them to know what to do without receiving the information beforehand. By the end of next week, we will have all of our students back in session. I believe October 1st is the first day that all students will be attending the district at once. Our kindergartners do have a slightly different schedule. Our kindergartners, on a typical year, they kind of phase in because school is brand new to our kindergartners. So they're going to have more of a phased-in period next week, and I believe their first day with everybody is actually October 2nd, which is next Friday, which is good because it gives them the full day with everybody. They get a weekend, and then they hit the ground running on Monday. We are excited for our students' return, and we have some things planned. I do want to thank our board members. I know I dropped the ball tonight, but we belong together. I've been talking throughout the summer into the year, be together. So this goes along with that theme and the importance of getting students in our classrooms and working directly to them. I want to make sure to mention that that includes our MOTA students as well. They're an important part of our school community, and they're part of being together, and it's going to take a community school effort in order to move forward and ensure that our students can stay within the schools. Online 2.0, I've been fortunate to be able to talk to a lot of parents over the course of the last couple weeks, and I'm just going to feed this right into MOTA as well because they kind of go together. But received a lot of feedback on Online 2.0 and MOTA. One of the challenges that we face with both of these programs is that there's very different viewpoints on the programs depending on who we talk to. We talk to some parents and they feel like their students are overwhelmed and they need more flexibility within the schedule or a decreased amount of work. We talk to a different parent and their feeling is that it's not enough. They need more work, they would like more in person and more structure. That feedback is important to us. We want to make sure that we are getting well-rounded feedback from all of our parents. So we are going to be sending out a survey to parents to let us know their thoughts on Online 2.0 as well as MOTA. I do have to say, in general, I'd say 99% of the parents that I've talked to, whether they have frustrations or not, have shared that things are much better this fall than last spring. Much more structured with more assignments and that students are learning. However, where I cannot argue with any of our parents is that we do have room to improve. I think we all know that. Again, this is our first pandemic. This is our first transition into online learning. So we are continuing to reevaluate our Online 2.0 in order to, and MOTA, in order to improve it and make it better. Now, my hope is once we get our students back into school, they stay in school. But I can't predict the future, and we want to be prepared for an instance where we're forced to be back online. Therefore, we're going to work in advance to make adjustments and improvements so they're ready to go in the event that we have to go back to online learning. MOTA had a little bit of a rocky start at the very beginning, and I'm referring specifically to the Apex programming, the third-party programming. I do have to compliment, though, our teachers and our student coaches and the work that they've done to get that together. That rockiness, most of it really wasn't on our end. It was just adjusting and adapting to a new educational platform that students needed to utilize. They caught on quick with support from our administrators and teachers, and things seem to be moving very well. I've actually received multiple compliments about Apex over the last week, especially how students can self-pace themselves. And I've actually even had a couple parents that were concerned that their children are going to be ahead of everybody else once they return next semester to school. But we assured them that the Apex program does follow the state standards, and we will have a smooth transition as we bring our MOTA students back. Actually, it will be next year, next calendar year. Yes, Medina Online Digital Academy, coined by Dr. Kwolek. The high school hybrid model, I did want to explain this a little bit, and had some conversations with high school parents and even students over the course of the past week or two. I do want to bring up that we have been talking about a hybrid model throughout the summer. even before our students reported. I do think we could have done a better job. I'll take it personally. I think I could have done a better job communicating with our parents in terms of the hybrid model and where we are at. What was important to me is that as we explored models at the high school, that we took a thorough look into bringing all of our students back 5 days a week before we even considered transitioning to a hybrid model. By the time we were at a point where we had all the information down, we were very close to the start of the school year, and thus the late final notification to the community. What we found in going through the buildings, we were worried about hallways, classrooms, you name it. When you're talking about 2,200 students, that's a lot of people in the building, and that's not including all of the staff. But what we found is we can handle it in terms of our hallways and our classrooms. Where the concern is with our cafeteria as well as with our study halls. And what the concerns are is we are working with a 3-foot social distancing per the health department with masks on. Lunchtime is a whole nother story. Obviously, you have to take off your mask to be able to eat. So during lunch, students must be 6 feet apart. We have lunches upwards of 600 students apiece, which isn't a problem when we don't have to separate them 6 feet apart. We did explore multiple options, which included setting up tables in the rec center, setting up tables in the gym, on the balconies, setting up tables in the PAC. And it was still a challenge for our largest lunches to be able to appropriately social distance them. And that doesn't even include the capability of cleaning the facilities, the cafeterias, and all those different locations in between the lunches, as well as monitoring the students during the lunches. The other issue was with study halls. We can have up to 300 students in our study halls. And I've had a lot of people say, well, we've got the PAC. It's a big facility. Why can't we use that? And that's a great question. And we thought the same thing. And we can social distance students in the PAC. We actually, the last couple of years, have been utilizing the PAC for study hall space even before all of this happened. The part that is very concerning is the cleaning of the facility in between the class periods. So with a 4 to 5 minute class exchange time, that doesn't offer a whole lot of time to make sure the facility is thoroughly cleaned before we bring in the next group of students. Now, in regards to the hybrid model, this is not something that we are hoping that we're in for a prolonged period of time. It was a priority to us to make sure we got our high schoolers back into the high school. And to be able to do this sooner rather than later meant implementing the hybrid model to ensure student safety. The high school committee, safety committee, is continuing to work on different avenues where we could bring all of our students back 5 days a week. I know Dr. Kwolek has worked with the staff over there, and one great idea they had is regarding an open campus to try and bring down the number of students that are in the building at any one time. That might play a key role in us being able to bring students back 5 days a week. We also will continue to explore the lunches and how we're handling lunches because we want our students back 5 days, and that is going to continue to be our goal. Dr. Kwolek is continually communicating. I think she's been sending out a weekly communication from the high school, and I think this week she had mentioned to me that she's actually going to be sending one out daily to make sure that parents and students know what's happening. So I'd encourage you to continue to watch for those newsletters as well as district information as we proceed. And then the last item I have is Capitol Conference. Typically, we attend the Capitol Conference in November, which I find, I think board members would agree, is a really valuable time for us to learn about educational law, policies, and best practices in education. That event is not going to be held in person this year because of the COVID situation. However, they are doing an online virtual workshop. I spoke to Noreen this morning, and we intend to sign up all of our board members for the virtual workshop, so you could log in right from home if you wanted to, and we'll get you the information. We'll probably receive it shortly after she registers everybody, but I anticipate it'll be a similar format, only we'll be doing it in front of a computer instead of exchanging classrooms as we typically do down in Columbus. Any questions or comments for me before I hand it off to Dave?
Okay, I'll take it. District bank balance decreased $4.2 million in August to $86,900,000. This is $2.1 million below last year at this time. The general fund revenues were above last August by $803,000. The combination of real property and public utility taxes account for this increase. General fund expenditures were below last August by $216. Purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay contributed to this decrease, which means that the others were above. Sales tax fund balance is down to $3.4 million. The district spent approximately $281,000. The largest portion of the expenditures was on the high school roof replacement here and AI route locker bay conversion. The rec center capital fund balance is up to $205,000. I know you're appreciative of that. The district received a donation of $1,000 and the city reimbursed $600. The district received $72,000 in investment income for August. The total collected is below last year at this time by $172,000. We have a general fund true days cash estimated to be 265 days. This is down from July by 19 days and below last year by 24 days. Questions? Thank you. I also have permanent appropriations. You'll see on the agenda today we're going to be approving the permanent appropriations for the 2021 school year. The total appropriations account to $118,028,000. This is up from last year by $1.1 million. And when we say up from last year, we're going from permanent appropriation last year to permanent appropriation this year. It's not taking the final that was passed here by the board in June and comparing it. The reason that they're up, well, let me give you reasons. There's a lot of variances in here. General fund is actually down by $242,000, and this takes into account that we moved transportation in the middle of last year. We moved their funding over to the 016 fund, the substitute levy, and we also purchased new buses out of the general fund, and this year we're moving those to the 016 fund as well. The permanent improvement fund, we have two out there. One is for the turf. We have a turf replacement fund that we started, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago, and the other is the rec center fund. Well, last year, the rec center with the, I believe we were paying for a roof at that time, so the rec center had to pay us back, but we had to appropriate the whole amount. This year, that appropriation isn't there. So between this year and last year, it's down $715,000. I spoke about the substitute levy, which is up. It's up $1.2 million. This includes the aforementioned transportation changes, but it also includes additional salaries and benefits for new hires. Our employee benefits self-insurance fund, the 024 fund, is up by $675,000. And what I wanted to do is actually look at what we spent last year on this and try and make it apropos to this last year. And so that increased from the permanent improvement last year of $675,000 increase. We also had 3 additional funds here. The first, the student wellness and success, that came last year. But with new monies coming this year, it's up $252,000. We have the ESSER funds, which is from the federal government through the state. This is for elementary and secondary schools. It's basically for COVID-related funding. That's $407,000. And then we have the Coronavirus Relief Fund, also through the federal government, through the state, of $317,000. So again, overall, we're $1.1 million above last year at this time.
Mr. Chambers, so when the state, when they cut us like 1.5 within that period of time, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Correct.
And then we've gotten these other funds from the federal government, but those funds are I don't know if, maybe they're earmarked, I don't know, but we have a cost related to coronavirus with purchases. I know you've been helping to keep track of that for us, but I mean, so that doesn't really make up the 1.5 is
No,
I guess what
no,
I'm
it's
getting at.
it's roughly a total of $700,000 coming from the federal government through the state. No, that won't make up for the 1.5 that we lost last year. The state did not make up the 1.5 this year, as was explained in our finance committee. We're still at the same amount that we ended last year. So,
Is there, if you were able to use those funds without restriction, which I don't know the answer to that,
well, they're restricted to coronavirus-related
all of that
spending.
all
yes.
the federal funds are restricted
Yes.
to that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chambers, will we be receiving additional funds towards these? Or was this a one-time?
Are you talking the coronavirus funds?
Yes.
There may be one more grant coming out from the state, but we have not heard about or seen anything with that as of yet. So, and I believe that's a smaller grant because I believe the whole state received something like $15 million. So. Okay, thank you very much.
At this time, are there any board communications?
I would just like to say it felt as close to normal as normal could feel. Not this weekend, but the weekend before, I got to have the opportunity to attend the girls' soccer game here at Medina, and they beat Wadsworth, and they played incredibly well, and it was fun to see a lot of the parents in the stands socially distanced, and they were doing it safely. But it was a competitive match, and it was a lot of fun. So I guess the point is just knowing that a lot of these sports continue to go on and play. It says a lot for Medina and for the programs, and we appreciate them doing it safely, and all the protocols are in place. And we're, you know, if the parents have the opportunity to be there, I know they're limited depending on the sport with the number of tickets that the parents can get. And I think the parents that were there seemed to be very happy to be there. So I was pleased to have the opportunity to be at the game. So thank you.
I'd like to follow up with that too, because within a couple mile proximity of the high school, you definitely can hear the band playing, and it is just warms my heart to hear them playing out there and to even hear their voices. So hopefully we do get everybody back to normal as quickly as possible.
Just wanted to comment that my daughters are just going into 3rd grade this year, and for the last week or so, that's all they've been talking about is how they're excited to get back to school. They're talking about the social distancing and wearing masks and not being able to touch their friends and give them hugs and all that kind of stuff. So they're not real happy about it, but at least the word's getting out there. At least one of my kids does pay attention, the other one not so much. But they're both talking about it, so it's good to hear that the teachers are getting that word out there. So thanks to the administration for making sure that knowledge gets out there.
I have a couple things. The policy committee met a couple of weeks ago. We'll be meeting again in a couple more weeks. There's additional set of policies that we hope to have for a first reading at the October regular board meeting. Sounds weird to say October already, but it is moving along. The curriculum committee met last week, and the parents that are on the committee provided a lot of feedback. Mrs. Pavlik, if you have anything you want to add, but I know they provided feedback that was both good as well as things that needed to be improved upon. So I'm very appreciative to those parents that they felt comfortable sharing that information with the committee and with the administrators that were there. I would also like to thank the administration and our IT department for the rollout of our one-to-one technology. I believe last year was the first year of a 3-year plan. We didn't expect to have the final phase of that rollout until the 21-22 school year. And I know that coronavirus hastened that along, but I think that we need to give credit to everyone for helping facilitate to get that rolled out as we needed to, so that we are all at one-to-one with our students and our technology. It's very important. And the last thing I want to talk about is the communication. I know there's been a lot of communications coming out from the district and from the individual buildings about the return to school, as well as MODA and the online learning 2.0. Sometimes it may seem overwhelming. I know my husband will ask me, hey, you've got this covered, right? So I try to keep up on all of it. And I'm sure with families that have children in multiple buildings, it might especially seem overwhelming at times. But know that if you lose that email, it's usually the information is out there on the website as well to refer back to. There's a couple of things that I thought were really, everything's been great, but really, really good that I think everyone should take time to look at. There's a YouTube video that Karen Lippincott put together, and it's about Google Classroom Quick Start for Families, and it gets 5 stars in my book. I just thought it was a great video for both parents and students to take a look at, especially, I have high schoolers. We're transitioning from Blackboard to more using Google Classroom as well as Progress Book, and I just found that it was very, very helpful and to me as a parent to help my students navigate. Really, they probably catch on very quickly, but to help me as a parent figure out where they are and to take a look at the grades in Progress Book now. And the other item is a Parent 101 presentation that was put together for the high school students. I think in the past, parents maybe didn't take a look at the Parent 101 if they already had a child in the high school, but this really is for all parents, because it also touches on how to help with your child's schedule and Progress Book and check their grades, and gives other resources. So I just want to encourage everyone to take advantage of those resources that we have out there. There are a lot of great resources that our administrators have put together, and I thank all of them and everyone's efforts to help make this return to school as safe as possible.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. You definitely hit on a number of such great things that are going on. And kudos to Dr. Kwolek, too, for the communication at that high school level. Definitely, I look forward to receiving that. I think it's such a great idea, too, of doing that daily communication because of how things can change and dealing with so many different not only the 4 different grade levels at the high school, but the whole encompass of whether they're in athletics or band or honors or extracurricular activities. So thank you very much for that endeavor. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, if it pleases the board, action item number 1, Treasurer's Report. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the August 2020 Treasurer's Report. Item number 2, resolution approval of the fiscal year 2021 permanent appropriations. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution approval of the fiscal year 2021 permanent appropriations. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's action items.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Hearing none. Mr. Chambers?
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Sable?
First up is donations. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the following donations to Medina City Schools. I would like to thank everybody for their generosity, especially during these difficult and challenging times. I would like to point out the donation from Harvest Presbyterian Church to support the food pantry at the high school. That is actually an effort that just began 2 years ago and has really flourished. And I know I often go over there and I see staff restocking the pantry so that food's available for our high school students because they don't participate in the after-school meal program that's provided through the county. So to be able to provide that to our students is important. Also, the $8,000 donation to the athletic department from Galley Printing Company to purchase new uniforms for our football team. And hopefully we're going to have a stadium, I'll take that back, and we're going to have a stadium full of fans next year to show those new uniforms off. Number 2, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve to amend the service agreement between the Medina City School District and the Educational Service Center of Medina County to provide reading intervention services for the 2021 school year. This is an adjustment to the ESC contract that the board approved at the end of last school year. The way we in Medina structure our ESC contract, our Educational Service Center contract, is we have a set amount of services that we receive and we go back to the board for approval if any services need to be added or adjusted. Due to need within the district and our student population, we do need some additional reading intervention services. Number 3, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the amended agreement between the Medina City Schools and a parent or parents for the parent or parents to provide transportation for their children with special needs to the school of the children's attendance for the 2021 school year, payment in lieu of transportation. And this actually was approved by the board at the last regular meeting. Adjustments needed to be made to this contract because of a change in the schooling hours, start of the day, end of the day for these particular students that could no longer be transported together. Number 4, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreement for the 2021 school year, and this is with Belfair Jewish Children's Bureau to provide paraprofessional services for students attending the Evolve Academy. And last but not least is personnel. It's strange seeing such a short list after coming out of the summer, but it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following personnel items as appropriate paperwork is completed and submitted to the Department of Human Resources. I do want to point out that we do have several leaves of absence on here specifically for support staff, and I'm not saying that this is the case with all of these, but I do want to mention that we do have an increased number of leaves from our support staff, simply individuals making decisions to stay home to assist online schooling, either with their children or with their grandchildren.
I'll make a motion, we approve the superintendent's action items, section G, 1 through 5.
Second.
One question.
Yeah, sure.
Aaron, part of the personnel is night school instructors. I didn't know we had night school. What is a night school teacher?
Yep, we've actually provided night school since before I got here. That's actually where we first became familiar with the Apex programming. It's to allow the opportunity for students to do credit recovery, and our goal is to get them to graduate on time.
Okay.
Any other discussion, questions? Public comment? Anything? No? Mr. Chambers?
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next agenda item that's separated out is personnel, administrative contract adjustment. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following title change with administrative contract salary adjustment for buildings and grounds supervisor, base salary increase of $7,500. This is due to a transition and increase in responsibility for this individual.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion, comments, questions? Rob?
Just, I think this is Mr. Mishler, and he has been doing and continues to do great work in our district. I know filling in when there's been some leaves in the business department. And I know even their staff have put together a lot of those plexi shields and worked on special projects. So we appreciate Mr. Mishler and what all he does. Thank you.
Any public comment on that? This is supposed to be okay. Hearing none, Mr. Chambers?
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg?
Aye.
Ms. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the last item on the agenda is administrative raises. I'd like to request that the board table this item until our October regular meeting. Obviously, whenever you're talking about finances and increases within a district and you're working with public dollars, we want to make sure that we're making the right decisions moving forward, especially in these complicated times that we're in. I can tell you from both perspectives, first from our in regards to our administrators, that this board, from individual conversations I've had with board members, values the work of our administrators, and it's important to them to appropriately compensate them, especially during these difficult times when everybody's putting in so many more hours in work, while at the same time, as obviously is appropriate for the board, is the well-being of our community. And doing what's right within the school district with our taxpayers' money. And tabling it will permit further conversation and executive session amongst the board.
I'd like to make a motion to table this action item until the October work session? October regular meeting. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Any comments, discussion on that? No? I agree with everything that you said, Mr. Sable. This board has been, this has been an ongoing conversation for many, many months, and I know that this board wants to make the right decision for our administrative team and for our community as well. These decisions are not taken lightly, I can assure our community. There's lots of conversations, and I thank each board member for what you have added to it. Mr. Chambers, roll call, please.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore,
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Thank you.
At this time, we've reached the public participation of the meeting. Community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees shall register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from all other attendees. Please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. And all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Okay. Mr. O'Cole, Mrs. Busby.
No, I only have Amy's the only person that's joined the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Any questions, Amy?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. At this time, I'll make a motion for the board to move into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, discipline, and compensation of a public employee or official. Dr. Qualick and Jim Shields, Mr. Sable, and Mr. Chambers will be joining the board in executive session.
Second.
Mr. Chambers?
Yes, Ms. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg,
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst,
Aye.
Mr. Ross,
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.
And there will be no action taken after executive session.